Before in the past, I've made the accusations of a certain group of women who act and behave in a certain way as children with tits. And, of course, this is a very inflammatory statement, and yes, it's done intentionally to go and inflame. The point, though, is it's still making a point. That point is that women who act and behave in a childish manner, that's what they should be called. They should be called children because that is the age bracket they go and exemplify. And you can be as mad as me as you want and all, and I'm like, well, okay, that's fine. But stop and think for a moment. How does a child act? A child, when it doesn't get what it wants, it goes and says, I want what I want, and I want it now, and if you don't give it to me, then I hate you! That is the mindset of a child. It's always, gimme, 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 and I don't want any responsibility. Give me all this and none of that. And I'm kind of sitting there like, well, gee, this describes the modern day woman in a nutshell. Especially when it comes to feminists. I'm serious. Stop and think for a moment. I mean, what kind of a human being would go and say, oh no, this person who is taking up so much space on the train, it's not that, yeah, they're just being inconsiderate or maybe they just don't know it and you need to go and ask them, hey, can you take up less space so I can sit down? You know, it's not that. Oh no, it must be all men are like this. In fact, let's call it manspreading. Or, you know, a guy goes and gives his opinion on something and you don't like it, well, that's mansplaining. Or a guy verbally cuts a woman off and, oh, well, that's man-terrupting. And I'm just sitting there like, okay, but what if I said, you know what? These black people, just take a look at them. They're taking up all this space. That's black spreading. You go and talk to them for a second, and guess what? They black-splain everything that comes out of their mouth. And not only that, but when you go and try to tell them the truth, they go and black-terrupt you just so they can go and get their insignificant point across. I'd be called a racist! I mean, in no world would that be allowed for me to go and do. But when you go and talk about women, they can do that. And again, give me all the privileges and none of the responsibilities. In other words, I want to have the privileges of an adult, but the responsibilities of a small child. And again, I'm just sitting there like, well, okay, you're a child with tits. That's all you are. You got all the physical attributes of an adult, but all the mental cognitive ability of a child. And the thing of it is, as it goes down the line, it keeps getting worse. I mean, when the number of women going to prison starts to go up, what happens? Oh no, we lose our mind. And yet that number is still below that of what men go to, but you know, we're talking about women here, and keep in mind, women are children with tits now, so of course, that's a terrible thing because they don't know what they're doing. They're dumb, they're stupid, they're ignorant. They can't be expected to act in an adult way. And once again, I'm not saying all women, so get off my back already. But I am saying that if you're a woman who acts this way, you should not be offended by what I'm saying if you yourself don't act this way. If you're a responsible adult, if you're a reasonable human being, you got nothing to worry about, and this doesn't apply to you. But if you are this type of person, all I can say is take some ownership. I'm not kidding. It keeps getting worse and worse. Imagine a guy being able to go and get out of parenthood. He could just go and say, I don't want to be a parent. Fuck you. Keep the brat. Do what you want with it. Walks away, and the woman is stuck with the kid. Well, a woman can go and ditch the baby at a police station, fire station. She can go and turn it into, put it up for adoption and everything else and all. She doesn't have to be a parent. She doesn't want to be a parent. But the guy has no choice. Not only that, but if anything goes wrong in a relationship, guess what? It's the guy's fault. If the guy cheats, he's just a dog. If the woman cheats, well, it's the guy's fault still because she must have done it for a good reason. Either here it is, he's not around enough because he's killing himself working 70 to 80 hours a day, trying to go and get money to provide for his wife and kids, or he doesn't make enough money and therefore I want to go and see someone better. Again, women, the privileges of an adult without any of the accompanying responsibility. This is the mindset of a child. I want what I want, and I want it now, and if you don't give it to me, then I hate you. And keep in mind the last bit. This here is usually the go-to result when a feminist doesn't get what she wants. Oh no, you're saying this because I'm a woman and you must hate women even though there's no proof of it. It's just that you disagree with me and that's all the proof I need that you hate women. This doesn't work in reverse. If I went and said something terrible about women, like if a survivor of rape, that she has a problem with rapists and she just needs to get over it, I'd be looked at like I'm crazy. But if a guy's already been burned before, and he's told, well, you know what? That guy must have a problem with women then, and therefore it's all his fault. Because, it's kind of like, well, you've had, let's say someone's had 5 or 6 relationships with women, and they've all been terrible. The feminist response would be, well, the only common denominator in this case is you. But if a woman did it, she's a victim in every single time. She's been a victim 5 to 6 times over. And again, I'm like, well, what are you then if not a child with tits? You keep saying, give me all the privileges of adulthood, but give me all the responsibilities of childhood. Again, this is not an insult, it's a description. It's like saying, let's ban the word bossy, and I'm sitting there like, so let me get this straight. You want to be bossy and tell people what to do. Do you see the irony here? Of course you don't, because you're a feminist. The point is, if you're going to be bossy and say, I think that this word shouldn't be allowed because it describes me, okay, then the problem isn't with the word, the problem is with you. And once again now, I will keep using this phrase, a child with tits, because that's not meant as an insult. That's meant to describe a certain type of woman, or a certain type of feminist. There is no word for a woman who acts like a child. Woman-child just goes and sounds a lot more like you're talking about a little girl. Like you're from the 12th century or something. But the joke kind of goes, well, the reason that there's no female equivalent for man-child is because women don't grow up. They're stuck in childhood perpetually. And whether you agree or disagree, at the very least, I can see a little bit of merit in what the person is saying. Yes, when you're an adult, in this society now, in Western society, if you're a guy, you have to be an adult. You have to be responsible, because those who aren't are very quickly punished for their actions. If you're a woman, you can go and be the biggest retard there ever was, nothing is your fault, and the government will go out of its way to protect you. Oh no, I've had 6 kids by 6 different guys. Give me money to go and support my bad decisions. In fact, right after I get that money, I'm going to go and have my 7th, 8th, and 9th kid because I get more money by having more kids. Yeah, that sounds like the kind of people we need reproducing. No, we don't. That's the person where after the 2nd, or if you're being generous, 3rd child, that's the kind of person that should be sterilized on the spot. And yes, I just said that, get over it. That'd be like saying, if I went and brought in a bunch of dogs off the street or something, if I ended up getting paid to take care of dogs, and I started to bring a lot of dogs into my household and everything else, and it turns out that I was just, mistreating the animals and not taking care of them, people would quickly figure out, hey, this guy doesn't care about the animals, he cares about the money. And not only would they take those dogs away from me, they'd probably put me in jail for animal abuse. But you go and abuse children and nothing's wrong. Which, of course, makes sense when you realize we got a bigger child taking care of smaller children. And no, I'm not saying that single mothers are terrible mothers, although I will say that most of the criminals are coming from single-parent households. I will say that much. But the point I'm getting at is, if you're going to have a number of kids and all, and you can't take care of them, in fact, you're actually abusing them, you're the kind of person that shouldn't be allowed to have kids. And once again, if a guy did any of this stuff, he would not only be arrested for it, but everyone would be legitimately attacking him for what he went and did, whether verbally or physically. But of course, again, we're talking about women. Again, women are children with tits. I keep saying this again and again, not to go as a mean, hateful thing to say, but because this is kind of the standard, the lowest common denominator as it was, that they've all fallen to. I don't want women to be like this, is what I'm saying. I want women to be adults. I want them to be responsible. And frankly, until society quits treating them like children and yes, this is, I believe, it's the problem. They're allowed to be morons. If you're allowed to be a moron, don't have to go and live up to expectations. You're just going to go with what's easiest. And I think that if a lot of women were actually forced to be responsible adults, they could do it. And if they can't, then at least we can go and weed out the ones that are bad, the bad apples and all that exist, and hopefully go and actually do something about the deteriorating relationship between men and women. Because right now, as it stands, men don't want nothing with a child I don't care how big those tits are on that child, they're still a child. And women, their heads are so indoctrinated with feminist bullshit that they actually see the men as enemies and people to go and take advantage of. It's not doing any side any good. And for me personally, I'm like, let's quit creating an environment where women are allowed to be children. Let's create an environment where women actually have to act as responsible as the men. And if they can't do it, they should be treated or punished in the same way a man would if they were to do the exact same thing.